In February 2015, as part of LGBT History Month, we spoke to Stuart Milk, nephew of the American gay rights campaigner Harvey Milk, who was assassinated in 1978. As one of the USA's first openly gay elected officials, Harvey Milk became an icon for the fight against social injustice and prejudice.
So, hey Stuart, welcome to Manchester. Are you enjoying the LGBT history event here?
Well, it's actually quite wonderful. The content has been terrific, and the people have been very inspiring. So Manchester this is my first time visiting, and it's great to be here for my first time for a historic conference. What I really loved, and we don't see in a lot of cities, is how your generations mix in your social scene here. So that was really interesting to me. I only went to a couple of your social establishments, but what I did see was a tremendous mixture of ages together, which I think is very unique and really kind of gratifying to see that.
Do you feel that perhaps the younger generation don't fully appreciate just how hard our rights were fought for and won?
I would say a tremendous number of young people don't know how hard, and a tremendous number of people my age and older who have forgotten. I mean, it's in their memory, but it's not in their everyday consciousness. And so even I sometimes, will take it for granted that we can go into a gay bar with a glass front where you can see people. Because when I was young, they were behind boarded up doors with egg stains usually on them, and or through back alleys. And so, it's history conferences like this that remind you, even someone my age, of what we have gone through, because I forget as well. And I remember my first Pride in Washington, which was the year after my uncle was killed. I mean, one of the things from a social point of view that kind of shocked me was how people looked in the daylight. Much different. I mean, they were much older than I had interacted with a bunch of people. I didn't realize they had gray hair, and it's just being out in the daylight was unusual, and young people take that for granted. That we can do that, and it's important to remember our history because we're always at risk of going backwards. My uncle was more social than me, and with a lot more fun, so he would have had a blast in the village and thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. Whereas the history conference, he would have put on a different persona and absolutely been inspired by remembrance of our history and also some trajectory on where we need to go.
So we've got a general election coming up here in a few months in the UK, and there's more and more openly out gay people standing for election. Do you think Harvey would be impressed with the progress that's been made?
Yes, absolutely. And for instance, Sean, the openly gay leader in Trafford, I mean, he got married publicly. He may not be, our friend Saunders doesn't think he's out enough, but he's definitely out and visible and not shy the fact that he's LGBT, and he actually thinks that is not unusual. He's young, he's only 27, and I love the fact that he doesn't think that that's so unusual. It's important and he knows Harvey's story and he knows the struggle, but he doesn't understand. He said, why wouldn't I be out? Because he feels that we've created a society that's at least comfortable enough for him to be that way. And that's our goal. And the thing that's important for people like Sean to remember is that it takes effort to keep that going. It doesn't just continue on its own.
Obviously, you've got an election coming up in America. Has there been improvement there as well?
Okay, so, the United States is 50 different states, and so unfortunately there's not one answer for the United States. So in many states of the country, and certainly many cities of the country, it is either a non-issue, meaning that it doesn't prevent someone from getting elected, and it doesn't detract from their political message, or it's not visible. It's just not done. We kind of have, really amazing progress and then parts of the states that really have been left behind and is almost, you know, a decade behind. So for instance, I've done a lot of work in the Baltics, and although there has been some good reception even amongst the conservative media that I'm there, mainly because of Harvey's legacy, there was certainly the aspect of this is not a Lithuanian, this is not a Latvian, this is not an Estonian coming in. And it's really kind of been very encouraging when we do work. We've done work for 3 years in the Baltics, and we now had a foreign minister in Latvia come out. And he came out in a party, the ruling party, that has not been terribly encouraging of LGBT people, and we don't know what's going to happen yet, but that lit the LGBT community in all 3 countries on fire, that they had much more powerful than me going there, that one of their own and a leader there, member of the cabinet that's running Latvia, has come out, and we'll see what happens, but that's the type of steps that we need to nurture in countries, not just us going in to support or even from afar supporting, but nurturing and growing people who are leaders who are willing to be out themselves. I can't tell people to do what my uncle did, to be honest with you. My uncle really wanted to be the last person to ever get a bullet for doing that. And so there are countries and situations where I could see someone coming out that an honor killing would absolutely happen. I mean, we have to realize that there are countries in the world where not only is it illegal and punishable by death, but there are countries where the societal acceptance, even if it's legal, is so pervasively against LGBT that society would see nothing wrong with killing someone who comes out. So it's caution. I mean, you have to say someone should not put their life at risk. My uncle willingly did that. And I don't think he would ask anyone to do that and put their life at risk. But certainly in a place like France, where we don't have there's not a lot of out politicians or public figures, period. And that I heard from the gay community there just 8 months ago when I was there. You know, we would encourage people to take that step forward, especially in light of the anti-immigration, anti-gay and lesbian, anti-Semitic and racist marches and protests that we've seen there. I mean, people need to start unmasking themselves, and I think France is a place where, for instance, that would work. I would not tell, to be honest with you, a Kuwaiti politician or leader to come out. I would love that for happen, but I couldn't be the one doing that. You know, my uncle probably doesn't come across in much media as humble, but there was a humbleness to him, and I do think that he would be saying, when we do the Harvey Milk Day celebrations or even have a postage stamp, he probably would have liked that postage stamp to have a lot of people behind it who are really fueling the progress we're making. And the progress we're making is by people who just live every ordinary lives, not politicians, not activist leaders, not entertainers, just the people who are having conversations with their parents at the kitchen table, who are standing up to other people in the schoolyard. I think he would have loved, for instance, that postage stamp, and we actually suggested it didn't work, to have pictures of just average, everyday people living their life openly behind him. So I think in many ways he'd be very proud of what we're doing. He adored Ann Cronenberg, who was his campaign manager, and I think he would be totally inspired that we two work so well together, hand in hand. And he would be inspired by our global legacy in terms of what we do in the States and what we do in terms of remembering him. Even major political party leaders did not include us with the African American struggle and the women's suffrage struggle, and the president has always put us on even playing ground. In his inauguration, when the whole country is watching, talking about Seneca Falls, Selma, Alabama, and Stonewall all being the most important elements of history. So even more important than the fact that he mentioned us was the fact that he mentioned our struggle as a struggle on par with the struggle for for racial justice and the struggle for sexual justice, the women's movement in the United States. And he repeated that, and he repeated it here at a history conference, so his inauguration speech in 2012, and I got to take my two of my youngest nephews with me to hear that speech right up close in person, and he mentioned Stonewall and Selma, which is the start of our racial justice movement, and Seneca Falls, which was the start of the movement for women's rights. And really, that was, kind of the top of the pie for us in terms of, ingraining LGBT rights in the fabric of the civil justice history of our country.
You have your presidential election next year, 2016. What would you like to see as a pledge in regards to LGBT rights from prospective candidates?
Well, I would like both parties to be endorsing LGBT rights and full equality, not just marriage equality, but non-discrimination, and to pledge to keep the president's really unparalleled presidential orders on supporting the global LGBT community. And I happen to be taking my Harvey Milk Foundation hat off. I happen to be a Democrat, but I would love the Republicans to join the Democrats and to join and to be fully on board on inclusivity and the celebration of diversity. They're not there today, and I would challenge them to get there.
We have our Gay Pride weekend here. It's 4 days, bank holiday weekend in August. Would you like to come back and make a speech on stage?
Yeah, talk to your Pride folks. I would love to experience more of it's really a very vibrant LGBT community. It seems to be a community. I got to spend some time with who will be the Lord Mayor next year. I guess he's deputy mayor right now or whatever. I mean, he was telling me that you had your LGBT center where I was last night built in 1978. There's no other, I can tell you we have nothing in the United States that was built with civic money in 1978. So there's a real rich history of celebration and diversity here, and I would love to experience more of that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for finding the time to speak to us, and enjoy the rest of your stay here in Manchester.
To learn more about the work of the Harvey Milk Foundation, visit milkfoundation.org.